This is my review of the Byrds album Sweetheart of the Rodeo. It was released in 1968 and produced by Gary Usher. So this would have been the sixth Byrds album I got. So I got it after, I got the original 5 albums and then I got this. I originally got it on this CD, then I got this kind of deluxe version, which is kind of the one I recommend, and then I recently got this vinyl here, which is actually a new pressing, not an older one. This album is kind of weird because so when I was getting into the Byrds, one of the first things I did, like after getting the greatest hits, like, okay, I like these guys, I went to the website that I was always reading reviews on at the time, which is I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, but I bring him up all the time. His name's like George Strostron or something. I'm not sure how to say his last name, sorry. But anyway, he had a website called, I think it was like Only Solitary, and it was just like a music review website. And I would always like read his stuff just to kind of get a general like overview of bands that I was getting into, because he did kind of a good job of like sprinkling a little bit of like their history and stuff throughout his reviews, and mentioning like lineup changes and things like that. So I was looking at his Byrds page, and it gets to Sweetheart, and it's like, oh, they do a country album. Well, it's like I had kind of like grown up listening to country music, and that was really like all I listened to until about like my freshman year of high school. Really was, I think, when I really started to kind of get into rock music, and I kind of got to the point where like I didn't want to listen to any country anymore, and it was just like all rock. I really didn't ever go back and listen to any country, and so then I was like, oh god, they made a country album, I really don't want to hear that, when I read about it. So I kind of, and then like reading the other stuff about the Byrds and how they had so many lineup changes and stuff, I was kind of originally like, okay, I'm just going to get their first 5 albums and I'm not going to bother with anything else after that. And I'm really glad I didn't do that, but one day I think I was on YouTube, and the Graham Parsons song "She" came up, and I just listened to it, and I knew that he was in the band for this album, and I liked that song and I liked his voice, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and buy that album and give it a chance. So I ended up buying Sweetheart, and I still remember like putting it in. I gotten home from college and I was going to make like lunch, and so I put it in, and just as soon as the first song started, I was like, wow, this is great. And so after I went ahead and got the rest of their albums after that as well. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling about this. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with this album, I feel like. So yeah, I wasn't going to get it, and I ended up getting it, and immediately I really liked it, and it kind of got me back into listening to country music again. I still probably listen to a lot more rock, and I really only listen to like older country. I don't really like anything that they've done since like the 90s, I guess. This album has a few lineup changes to mention, so like if you watch my Notorious Bird Brothers review, I talk about how like the band pretty much like imploded during the making of that album. And so Michael Clark and David Crosby are gone, and they're replaced by Chris Hillman's cousin Kevin Kelly on drums, and Graham Parsons replaces Crosby. I guess he's credited for guitar on this album. I think live he kind of played like keyboards. Wikipedia says he plays some of the like piano and stuff in different parts of this. I'm not sure if that's true at all, because I think really it only credits him for guitar on the album. Yeah, it only says guitar. But the credits for this album are kind of messed up a little bit, because they have all the session players and stuff, and like this copy of the album here, and the original copy of the album credits Kevin Kelly for drums and John Corneel for drums. And from what I understand, John Corneel only played on a track called Lazy Days, or is that it? Yeah, Lazy Days. Sorry, it's late. I couldn't remember if it was Lazy Day or Lazy Days. But according to him, at least, that's the only song he played on, and it's not actually on like that version of the album. It's only a bonus track on the later things, so really that's kind of a miscredit, because he doesn't apparently play on any of the songs that are actually on the album, or at least like on that version, which isn't like, you know, saying anything bad about John Gorney or anything like that, because I'm a fan of his from, you know, stuff with the International Submarine Band, and then the songs that he played on the first Burrito Brothers album. But yeah, I'm a really big Kevin Kelly fan, probably like the biggest Kevin Kelly fan that there is, since he didn't really like play on a lot of stuff, but I really credit like his drumming for being what kind of got me into this album, because it's really the most like rocking part of the album, even though it's not very much. This album's really like, people call it country rock now and say it's kind of like somewhat the beginnings of country rock, but it's really more of a country album in my opinion. And I've heard people say like, oh, it's not, but I mean, really, it's more country than I think like anything that's come out of Nashville in probably the last 30 years or so. So I don't know. To me, it's a pretty much a country album almost. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm rambling because it's late. So the album starts off with "You Ain't Going Nowhere," Bob Dylan cover, and I think it's a great opening track. Like I said, when I first started listening to this, it immediately just kind of grabbed me and pulled me in with the pedal steel guitar. Just a great opening track. And this, I don't know, this is an album, I guess I've kind of mentioned this now, like I really love this album. I'm going to speak very highly of it. I've played this album for a lot of people that have just hated it. There's some people that just can't get over the country thing. So, like, if you're like that and you can't stand any country, you're probably going to hate this album, because it just sounds like really, really country, at least in my opinion. So yeah, You Ain't Going Nowhere, great Dylan cover, really like the vocals on it with McGuinn taking the lead, and then you can hear Parsons pretty clearly in the chorus, which is cool. Just really love the playing on it and everything, love the drums on it. I'm probably going to say that in like half the songs. But yeah, just really great opening track. The next track, I'm a Pilgrim, sung by Hillman, and I'm probably not going to mention who wrote like every song, because pretty much every song on this album is a cover except for the two Graham Parsons originals, which are kind of like in the middle. So every other song is a cover. Anyway, I'm a Pilgrim, sung by Hillman. Kind of a nice, slower song. It's got some cool fiddle parts in it, some cool banjo played by McGuinn. Yeah, it's a good track. Not really like my favorite thing on here, and it's one that I kind of like skip over in the car since it's like one of the slower ones. But I wouldn't like take it off the album or anything. I think it fits like really well here. Good song. Third track, The Christian Life. This one, I really didn't like this one at first, but it's grown on me. I don't know. It's still not like this is, I think, the song on the album that most people would listen to and be like, oh, that's really corny. I mean, I'm not like trying to say anything negative about religion or anything. If I'm like not super religious, but if you are, you know, that's great. Not like trying to insult it or anything, but just the song the way it is, I could see a lot of people thinking it was kind of corny. In fact, like, so McGuinn sings this version. Originally, Graham Parsons sang it, and it's one of the kind of controversies about this album that I guess I forgot to mention already was that there are a lot of Graham Parsons vocals that were replaced before the album was released, and it's kind of debated as to why that was. And I'll kind of talk about like which versions I prefer and like where they're at and stuff. But this is the first track that would have been sung by him and was replaced with a McGuinn vocal. And at the time, I think Roger's Christian now, so I don't think he would like think it's cheesy anymore. But I think at the time when he recorded it, he kind of at least it says in like the album notes, he was like, yeah, I thought it was kind of cheesy, so the vocal comes across that way. And I could definitely see, like I kind of agree with that, and I think that the Parsons vocal sounds like more sincere. I've become really used to the McGuinn vocal, though, just listening to it, the album as the way it is, though, so I kind of like the McGuinn vocal a little bit better now just because I'm more used to it. But I really like the song now. I love the instrumental track to it. I mean, it is a really catchy song, honestly. But yeah, I love the instrumental stuff to it. I love the pedal steel and the drums especially. He just does some things on it that I think are really cool. The fourth track, You Don't Miss Your Water. This one was probably my least favorite for a long time, but it's grown on me a lot. Another one where I just really love the instrumental backing parts to it. This whole album, I love that everybody's playing on it. But this was another one of the tracks that were McGuinn vocal replaced a Parsons vocal, and I honestly like the McGuinn vocal on this one better as well. I think of the versions, because pretty much all the Parsons vocals are like bonus tracks on here, and I think that of all the songs that he sang lead on originally, that this was the one that he had the weakest vocal on. Like, I don't think any of his vocals are bad. I've heard, heard and read Hillman saying that like most of the vocals that he did weren't that good anyway, and this is the one where I kind of agree with that. Like, I don't think this one was as good as the McGuinn vocal that ended up on it. I don't think I would agree with that for all of the vocals he recorded, but definitely for that one. So anyway, fifth track, You're Still on My Mind. This one, we get the first Graham Parsons vocal, and I really love his vocal on this. Really love the whole song. Always been kind of one of my favorites on here. Not a whole lot to say about it other than that. Sixth track, Pretty Boy Floyd, Woody Guthrie cover. This is another one that's always been a favorite of mine. Really love the banjo on it. This one's a session guy. I guess I've read the story where McGuinn was like practicing it, and the session guy walked by him and like kind of listened to him and was like, "Oh, you better let me do that." But yeah, it's got some cool banjo on it. Just a really great song. I love the lyrics, and yeah, I think McGuinn does a really good vocal on it as well. Seventh track, Hickory Wind. This is a Parsons original. There's a couple different versions of this. I think most people really like the one with Emmylou Harris off of Grievous Angel, but to me, this is the first one I heard, so this is kind of like the definitive version of it to me. Just think he has a really great vocal on it. Love the instrumental parts and everything. Just a great version. I guess I would say that this is probably my favorite track on the album since it's an original. Might actually be tied for the next one, but I love both the Dylan covers on here and a lot of the other songs so much that it's really like almost impossible for me to pick a favorite track on this album. The eighth track, 100 Years From Now, another Parsons original. This one strangely gets kind of a McGuinn and Hillman like co-lead vocal on it, replacing Parsons's. And this is like probably the track on the album where I wish the most that they had just left Graham's vocal in, especially since it's one that he wrote. And there's a couple different alternate takes with different vocals on it from him, and some of them are better than others, but I definitely think that like the best vocal that he has on those alternate takes would have probably been better than this like McGuinn Hillman singing together, because I don't really I don't know, I think that the original like Byrds with Clark and McGuinn's voice, that worked really good with those two singing together. At the same time, I'm not sure if I feel the same about Hillman and McGuinn's voice. But yeah, it's kind of weird to me that they chose to do that with the vocal on this track in particular. But one of my favorites, it's one of the more like rocking tracks on here, probably the most, really. Really like the drums on it, some cool guitars, and it's just a really great track. Probably, like I said, if there's one thing on here that people that don't really like country are gonna like, it might be this one. But it still is a little country. The ninth track, Blue Canadian Rockies. This one's sung by Hillman. This was another one that took me quite a while to get into, but when I got into it, I really got into it. Now it's up there with one of my favorite, or for one of my favorites on the album. I think it's my favorite Hillman vocal on the record. Just a really cool song. Another one where I really like the drums. 10th track, Life in Prison, Merle Haggard cover. This is another one sung by Graham, and I think that he kind of complained that this song wasn't supposed to be on the album. That it was supposed to be more like a practice take or just them kind of messing around. I don't know. I don't like not. I mean, I like this track. I don't have a problem with it. I think I've heard like the band complain about it so much that it kind of makes me think that maybe if there was a track left off the album, I'd be okay with this one being the one. It's just got the like I like it. I think it sounds good. I like Graham's vocal on it. To me, the instrumental like backing of it sounds a little bit happy for what the song's talking about. Like it just sounds kind of like oddly cheerful for the lyrical subject. I think that's kind of the big problem with it, but I mean it's not bad. And then the 11th final track, Nothing Was Delivered, another Dylan cover, sung by McGuinn. I think it's a great closing track. I really love the pedal steel on it and the drums. Just really great way to close the album. There's a lot of bonus tracks on all the versions of this. I'm going to kind of talk about this one the most because it's like the 2-disc and it's got, I think, the best selection of bonus tracks. But like for me, one of the highlights of the bonus tracks is All I Have Are Memories. It's credited to Kevin Kelly, but I think there's some debates over who like wrote all of it. I'm not really sure. There's a bunch of instrumental versions of it on as bonus tracks, but this 2-disc version has a version of the song with the lead vocal from Kevin, and I really like this version. I really like his vocal. Probably not the best like technical singer, but I like his vocal tone a lot. I would probably, if I was like ranking Byrds singers, I think I like him definitely more than Batten, probably more than York as well. Maybe, I don't know, he'd probably be like tied with Gene Parsons if I was going. Like he would lose out to everybody, all the like original 4 singers, and Parsons, and well, Graham Parsons, and he'd lose out to Clarence White for me too, because I really like Clarence White's voice, even though he doesn't have technically the best voice. But yeah, anyway, really like Kevin's singing on it, and think it's a cool song. The next bonus track, Reputation, that's another strong one. I kind of wish, like, if I was going to switch out one thing on the album, maybe like put that in instead of Life in Prison. It's got a good Graham vocal on it. Pretty Polly, it's a cool song sung by Roger. It's got some cool 12-string in it. Lazy Days, Graham Parsons song. This is the one where John Cornell drums, and you can kind of hear like he does sound different than the rest of the stuff on the album. He sounds a little like louder, a little like heavier to me at least. But yeah, Lazy Days is cool here. It's also on the second Burritos album, which I'm gonna have to review those soon, and all the Graham stuff. I probably like that version a little more because I listen to it more often, but the 12-string on this version is really cool. Not the best Graham song though. It's kind of almost a throwaway. Then you have all the bonus tracks with the Graham Parsons vocals, the one with Christian Life, and I pretty much already mentioned all these. You Don't Miss Your Water, 100 Years From Now. This version has a ton of different bonus tracks. I'm not going to go into all of them. Those are just the most important things. So yeah, this review's been kind of rambly. Sorry. Really long day at work. It's like really late. Yeah, Sweetheart of the Rodeo. For this, it's probably my favorite Byrds album. Like, I don't know, it's really hard to like say because it's so different than everything else that they ever did, and really like I I always rant that like the Byrds are kind of three different bands. Like the first lineup's kind of its own band, and then there's this, and then there's a whole different thing after this. But this version, I mean, it's like the four of these guys in a band, McGuinn, Hillman, Parsons, and Kelly. I think they were only in the band for like, I don't know, like a couple months. Like this lineup only existed for a couple months, so it's very like, was a very small period in time where it was around, which I think kind of makes me a little fascinated with it, because there's really not a lot of, at least not that I've heard, like any good live recordings of this version of the band. Like most of them are really hard to hear everything that's going on. And this is the only album, but just such a good album. Kind of a weird album because it's all pretty much all covers. But that really doesn't bother me. I think that they picked a really like interesting group of songs, and I think they all flow together really well. I think the production sounds really good. It's a lot less experimental than Usher's other productions, but it just has a really good sound to it. You can hear everything really good. So yeah, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, I definitely recommend it, but like I said, if you don't like country, you're probably not going to like it that much, like if you can't stand country. But yeah, I think really strong album. It's a shame that this lineup didn't last a little bit longer.